Well, the haters gonna hate, 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 and the fakers gonna fake, 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 baby. I'm just gonna make, making luck, a Dominion podcast.
I don't like sushi, actually.
I'm sorry to hear that you're incorrect about this, but so we are here to talk about Dominion, and
Welcome to Making Luck, a Dominion podcast.
welcome to it.
We did it, guys.
So
We're here.
we made it.
Well, we made it. We made it a day late. Sorry.
Yeah, my bad.
No, it's definitely not your bad. Like, this is
Someone's
100% my fault.
No, it's okay.
I went to a convention this past weekend, and I was not about to ask my wife to be like, hey, can I spend 2.5 hours in the basement the day after I get back and spent all day at work and, like, not spend any time with you or the kid? Because, anyway, so we didn't do that. So, just decided to push it off a day.
But speaking of that convention, there was a tournament, and I understand that the winner of said tournament...
Yeah, so, like, I went up there and the Michigan tournament, and I was like, hey, maybe for the podcast, I'll interview the winner or something. And so, you know, the tournament happened. I had a lot of fun. It was great. And I thought, like, you know, maybe we could do even better. So instead of interviewing the winner there and recording it, I thought we would bring the winner back here and record them live on the podcast.
Yeah.
So here we are. We're about to bring on our guest star of episode 50 of Making Luck, a Dominion podcast, the winner of the 2018 Yukon Dominion Tournament in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and pre-qualified for the finals of the World National Tournament at Gen Con in 2019. Are you ready, Jake?
I am, and that was a mouthful, but who is it?
So I just have one question for you, man. How did you get to be such a f***ing asshole mother? Well, you know, I was born that way, to be honest with you.
If you can't tell, yes, Adam Horton did win the tournament, which made the process of interviewing the winner of the tournament for the podcast a little more awkward, but...
There was nothing awkward about that.
Right, no. Adam interviewing himself. I mean, how different is that from a normal episode of Making Luck? But anyway, so, shots fired.
Zing!
Yeah. So, congratulations on the tournament. About what was it like? I mean, was it a good event?
Yeah, so I've been going there for the past, 5 or 6 years. I've lost count of the number of years I've gone. That's how often I've been going. I went there 1 year and haven't not gone because the Dominion tournament was fun and I wanted to keep on going. So if you're anywhere near Ypsilanti, Michigan, which is, for our video listeners, it's right there. But for our audio-only listeners, it's pretty close to Detroit. It's about a half-hour drive to Detroit.
Just take a right turn from where you are now. You'll get there.
Yeah. It's in the southern part of the Lower Peninsula of Michigan. So, if you're anywhere in, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, or Michigan, Lower Peninsula, or even, some parts of southeastern Wisconsin, it's less than, a 3 or 4 hour drive to get there. And it happens every year, and I think it's a really well-run event. A lot of the things that I do in my own tournaments are things that I stole from the tournament organizer of this tournament.
Like those trays, he stole those.
Well, I bought those, but yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
But it's a really well run event, and there's a somewhat different crowd of people that goes there every year.
Really?
So there were 12 people this year. Attendance usually ranges from 9 to 25, depending on things. The convention is sort of filling up that hotel, and so
nice.
Yeah, the 12 people that were there, a lot of them were very, very talented at Dominion. So I don't know how I beat them. Must have been lucky, I guess.
No, it's okay. It's first player advantage or something.
Yeah, first player advantage.
Yeah, every game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So, but in any case, I did write a blog post detailing all of the kingdoms that I played for that tournament and what I thought about them and how they went for me. So we'll link that post in the description of this video, or you can just go to adamhorton.com. It's right there at the top. There's a picture of the finals game where I was, playing. I was thinking heavily, and then the other two people are in there probably laughing at me because I was thinking too heavily. I don't know.
Well, look at you now.
Yeah.
You have a podcast about a card game.
That's right. They don't.
Right.
Shout outs to all of the, people that I got to see there. I happen to know that a couple of the people in that tournament were listening to episodes of this podcast on the drive to the tournament.
Nice.
So there was a guy that I had never met before, friends of someone who had traveled to my most previous tournament in Cincinnati, and he was like, "Oh, you're the guy from the podcast," and I'm like,
"The guy."
That was really great for my ego, I gotta tell you. Getting recognized like that was pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
Yeah. So I had a good time that weekend, and tournament was great.
Yeah, no, I definitely wish I could have made it too. Played in the tournament as well. But speaking of tournaments, I know that you have another announcement to make.
Oh yeah, check it out.
Regarding another upcoming tournament you won't be able to play in.
Yeah, I'm not going to play in this one. So I'm, I have a Dominion tournament every 6 months in the Cincinnati area, and finally have a date for the next one. It's going to be in January 2019 on Saturday the 12th.
I'm always excited to play in Adam's tournaments. They are a big part of how I started getting involved in Dominion in the first place, started to learn the ropes, and so I'll be playing in it, which is why I can't help him in any way organize it or playtest Kingdoms.
Yeah, you let me borrow your cards, though, which is extremely important to the success of this tournament.
There's that, so I'll be able to play in that, and of course, attendance of all people, all calibers, all skill levels is encouraged because they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, so the last tournament, it consisted of 3-player games, and it had 31 people show up.
Yeah.
That's enormous. Like, I never dreamed of having a tournament that big. I have every reason to believe that it's going to keep growing.
Well, this one's a 2-player one, right?
Yeah, so this one is 2-player games.
Which are a lot more popular.
It's true. All the crowd that goes to, like, every competitive Dominion that I've ever been to prefers 2-player games, which is why I do these tournaments.
Yeah.
And I have reason to believe it's going to be bigger than that. And not only does that mean that I'm going to need more sets of base cards because there's more games of Dominion going on, but, like, also, there's more games for a 2-player tournament for the same number of players as a 3-player tournament.
Right.
So I don't know where I'm going to get all those. But anyway, if you want to go, if you're anywhere near Cincinnati, I get a lot of people that travel in for these tournaments, and they keep coming back. I'm assuming because they have fun. And
not because Adam's threatening them.
I'm definitely not threatening them.
No.
Definitely not. But, don't be shy about it. If you're anywhere near the area, send me an email, or you can go to adamhorton.com to the contact page, or you can go to the tournaments page. There's a Facebook event already. Contact me any way you know how. I can answer any questions. I can help you find a place to stay in the area. I have, like, a few couches you can crash on if that's absolutely necessary, but I do have to know you're not an axe murderer first, so we'll talk about it. No promises.
Also, you probably only get one. He said he has a few couches you could crash on. You could probably only have one couch at a time.
Yeah, and you don't get to take it home with you. That's not what I meant.
Right, that's going to be the raffle prize. So speaking of the raffle... Yeah, anyway. So...
Anyway, I would really like to see all of you at the tournament. If you're listening to this and you're anywhere near the area, please come out. It's going to be fun. And I'm going to try and have something a little bit special. Last time it was sandwiches. The time before that it was cookies. See what happens.
Yeah.
We should all go.
I'm crossing my fingers for brownies.
Yeah. I was thinking about, maybe a little dessert this time. We'll see.
Nice.
Something I can make a lot of. Because we're probably going to have a ton of people.
If I've earned it. But last time we did an episode on this, last one you listened to is probably the mini-sode that we released in between. But this time...
We were recording our thoughts on Renaissance.
Yeah, which you'll get to hear later.
Yeah, in like a couple months.
We'll be long dead.
There was one joke that I forgot to make in the intro to that episode. Can I make it now, please, before we actually do the podcast?
I don't think I could stop you if I tried.
He's got a great point. So anyway, there's a card in Renaissance called Old Witch. And there's one thing about that card that is the most important thing about the entire set. And I can't let this be quiet any longer.
Yeah, and I think I knew what you mean.
Yeah.
I also think you did make this joke.
I definitely did not make this joke.
All right.
In any case...
We're going to come back to this.
In any case, even if I did, it's such a great joke that it needs to be made again. The most important thing about Old Witch is now we're going to be calling Witch Medium Witch. So anyway, we talked about knights in the last real episode of the podcast.
Yeah, so we talked about the Knight's Pile. We talked a little bit about what it does and what it means for the game. And of course, as always, we concluded on a kingdom that we were going to be playing through the next week as we did our thing, existed, and it's going to have knights in it. Did have knights in it. So we're going to talk about that kingdom. And that starts by reading the cards in it.
Yeah.
And I'll go ahead and take care of that.
Yeah, good call,
Yeah.
man. Nice.
So the cards in this kingdom that we played are Poorhouse, Chapel, Crossroads, Monastery, Guide, Wishing Well, Bureaucrat, Grave Robber, Highway, and Knights. Once more for our audio-only listeners, we have Poorhouse, Chapel, Crossroads, Monastery, Guide, Wishing Well, Bureaucrat, Grave Robber, Highway, and Knights.
Yeah, so last time I think we did agree that the best thing you could do involved knights. Heavily.
Yeah, so we had hypothesized these two different kinds of decks. Like, Adam kind of advocated... We both agreed that the Knights was probably best, but Adam advocated for this other deck that he thought would have a good chance to.
Yeah, like, I thought that maybe this Knight-proof deck that you could build, and I'm using quotations in that, could be not terrible. And I just want to go on record as saying that, indeed, the deck was terrible. So, about that, I was incorrect.
So here's the... Well, the deck wasn't terrible, is the thing.
It had, like, no frickin' chance of winning.
It had no chance of winning, but that was because of the things that could happen with the Knights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, you needed to do the Knights. It's important.
And so there were... The deck he's talking about is one that's Knight-proof because everything that it uses costs 1 or 2 or 8. It's either provinces or poorhouses or crossroads
the problem,
or whatever.
The problem is that $8 card, province, turns out it's not safe from knights.
Yeah, because we have highway. You actually called this during the analysis of the kingdom that we wrapped up with. You said, I'm going to buy provinces, and they're going to end up in your deck. And that's true, because he bought provinces, and then I played a bunch of highways, and then knights, and then trashed his provinces, and then stole them with Grave Robber. It was really fun.
It was really fun for you. I gotta be honest, the thing that I want to pinpoint, the thing that I underestimated. When I was thinking about that deck, I was like, okay, this Chapel, Crossroads, Poorhouse kind of deck is going to be greening first, right? It's really quick to be able to province.
And to be fair, it was.
Yeah, I started getting provinces on like turn 7 or turn 8. And
you had 4 of them by like turn 12, which would normally be like not beatable or ignorable.
Mm-hmm. And like pretty good prospects of continuing to get them because Crossroads is a really good card.
Well, and
like if you draw your Crossroads, you can basically find all the poorhouses you need.
Which is 2. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that takes 2 of them.
Yeah.
Because you trash all the treasures.
Right.
Yeah. So it turns out like that's really good, and I thought, he can trash a province and I can buy a province on every turn, but there's no way that I'm going to lose the game because I'll still have enough points to win. I did underestimate the idea that he could play like multiple knights in a turn and trash multiple of my provinces in a turn, even if he could only gain one of them with Grave Robber. But like no lead was safe. Like if I didn't have a province in my starting hand, it was going to be in the Trasheroni on that turn.
Yeah, no, that's very true, especially because you've thinned your deck so much with the Chapel that you didn't have any like buffer. There wasn't anything else that they could hit instead. Yeah. And if you play enough knights, it makes it so that really only... Or the highways with the knights. Actually, so the way that you build this deck that we're talking about, it probably deserves some lip service here. You open with a Chapel, obviously, and then your other opener, I don't know, it's kind of up in the air. I tried Poorhouse, I tried Second Chapel, I tried Crossroads. None of them felt great.
I like the double Chapel opening, I think regardless of the deck you're going to build here.
Yeah.
Poorhouse does that.
This is true. Yeah, I mean, the Devil Chapel opening was fine. It didn't help that because the few times we did play this, I got bad shuffle luck every opener time anyway, and my opening buys collided, so it didn't matter. Or I got, Crossroads with no estates or something, and, so it didn't really matter.
Crossroads. I don't think I like opening Crossroads.
Yeah, I was kind of experimenting a little bit, but anyway, so you get this chapel and... you get a Crossroads pretty early, but you also get these 2 poorhouses. And eventually, anytime that you don't hit 5, you're grabbing either, I don't know, a guide or a wishing well. It doesn't really matter which one. They do about the same thing. Yeah. I think that Wandering Winder and RTT said the guide was better. I thought the wishing well was fine.
Well, the first one's probably a guide, and then the second one might be a wishing well. It doesn't freaking matter.
They do about the same thing for you. And... which is almost nothing, but then your first 5 is not a knight; it is a grave robber, and that's really important because the grave robber is the most important card in the deck.
There was one time that getting a highway before the grave robber made sense because I had 1 poorhouse in my deck at that point. I don't remember how I hit 5. It was really weird what happened, but it meant that I could hit 5 and have a poorhouse.
Sure. But the point is that's really edge casey because the big part of the grave robber is that it can trash the chapel into a knight. And also, you need to have the grave robber in the deck ASAP because your grave robber grabs knights back, which is really important because the knight's file actually doesn't empty or anything. At least it didn't when we played. Even when we did the mirror, it didn't empty.
Yeah, but both of us played that game so poorly.
Yeah, you did play pretty poorly.
Yeah.
But then you get 2 highways in the deck. You don't really need more than 2. If you have Sir Martin, you might get more than 2 just to have those extra buys mean something. But
I think there's something to putting a 3rd highway in the deck.
Sure.
If you want to laser focus down their provinces, the 3rd highway is pretty important.
I could see that being the case because it makes knights ineligible to be trashed by the knights, so they can't. So it means that they have to trash the provinces. But 2 or 3 highways in the deck. And 2 or 3 highways in play, and then you just start playing knights as much as you can. You get to play 3 a turn because Crossroads is the only village other than the village knight. Then if your opponent is mirroring you, then it gets weird. But if they're not mirroring you, you just destroy them and win that way. But if they are mirroring you, you get into this really weird stalemate where it's really hard for either of you to make any progress because your deck is this self-contained machine that is just doing the same thing every turn. It is playing a Crossroads and then playing a knight or 2 and its highways. And
self-contained machine doing the same thing every turn, consistent inputs and outputs.
Yeah.
Yeah, if only there was a word for that.
Right. Yeah. And the most important card to the deck was the grave robber. It was grabbing back your highways. It was grabbing knights. If you were dumb and played too many highways, it was doing nothing because there was nothing in the price point it could grab.
Yeah,
but,
those are good times.
Yeah, it's also funny because even if you want to grab something that would be eligible with Grave Robber, there's no draw here other than potentially Crossroads, and so you've got to play the highways anyway because they're cantrips in your deck. So if you lose Sir Martin, he's just gone. You're not getting him back. But
poor guy.
Yeah, some of the knights are more.
Yeah,
some of the knights are more valuable than others in this mirror match. Like the discarding knight can make your opponent discard the provinces that they happen to draw, so that you can trash them and grab them.
Yeah,
the plus buy knight was really cool with highway. I actually really enjoyed this kingdom.
Yeah, good for you, man. I'm happy for you. I'm pretty jazzed. I don't ever have to play it again.
Yeah, we get into some of the differences between Adam and I as players. Like, you've noticed there have been some kingdoms that I really disliked that Adam was totally fine with, but this was my jam.
This was okay. Well, anyway, are we done talking about this yet?
No, I just want to talk a little bit more about. So anyway, this episode we are going to cover Encampment and Plunder. And that is a split pile from the Empire's expansion, and obviously we talk about those together. So I think this is a good time to read the text of that card.
Sure. So the top card of the pile is Encampment. It's a 2-cost action. says +2 cards, +2 actions. That's pretty good. And then you may reveal a gold or plunder from your hand. If you do not, set this aside and return it to the supply at the start of cleanup.
Yeah, so you have this card that is effectively Lost City, but if you do not reveal a gold or a plunder, you lose it after you play it. It goes back in the supply.
Yeah.
And then the bottom 5 are plunder.
You do it.
Plunder is a 5-cost treasure. It gives you $2, so it's effectively a silver, but it also gives you a VP chip.
So it's effectively a monument.
Yeah, so it's basically like a treasure version of a monument.
It's like you played a chariot race and then a copper.
Yeah, but you won the chariot race.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen.
And you drew the copper.
Yeah. Anyway,
it's just like that.
It's a silver that gives you a VP chip, and it also helps you keep the encampments in your deck because remember, it says in plunder or gold. So those are the top 5 are encampments, and the bottom 5 are plunders.
Yeah. It's a pretty sweet card, huh?
Yeah, this pile is pretty much never, like, ignorable. I don't think I've played very many games at all where at least one of the 2 parts of this Encampment Plunder duo weren't super important.
Well, I mean, never ignorable, I think, is a little bit of a strong statement, actually. Because if there's, like, no plus buy or extra gains, like,
sure.
A lot of times Encampment isn't worth picking up. And if Encampment's not worth picking up, then you're never going to see the plunders.
Man, Encampment not being worth picking up, though, seems like a stretch. Because we have this card that is basically Lost City. And just for reference, Lost City is a card that does what Encampment does, except it costs 5. And when you pick it up, it gives your opponent a benefit. And this costs 2 and doesn't do that. So this just and Lost City is considered a very strong card. And so for scale here, I mean, encampments are really, really powerful.
It seems a little goofy to be putting that in a deck that's mostly focused on money, though. I mean, maybe you do it, but it just doesn't seem like the most important thing ever. I think it's. I mean, what I'm getting at here is that encampment, the top card of the pile, like it needs 2 things to really, really be great. I think it has one of them. You're probably fine. The 2 things are extra gains of some kind.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to spend your whole turn just picking up a 2-cost card that might be going away. Feels kind of bad. And then trashing. Because you want to be able to line up your encampments with your whatevers to keep them in your deck.
Yeah, so I actually had originally said that that Encampment and Plunder are probably the best of either payload or deck control that's in the kingdom. And Wandering Winter actually made a good point that that's not really true by itself. That what these are is really good support pieces for other deck control / payload. As in, the encampments are really good supplemental deck control. They're really good to help your deck stay there even if it doesn't get it there.
What is that?
Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
we're not worrying about it.
Yeah, no. So, like Adam said, the draw and actions, that's an element of deck control, but encampments aren't really getting control of your deck by themselves because they go away. They really want to be in a deck that already has some control to help give it more control.
Oh, so I think what this really means is, like, you want to make sure you can line up your encampment with a gold or a plunder so you can keep it in your deck, right?
That would be the goal, yes.
So if I have, like, 1 gold in my entire deck and it's 30 cards, I may not be able to play my encampments because I'm drawing all these other cards and I didn't find my gold yet, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of considerations to go into with that. Like, sometimes it's worth doing anyway, but yeah, totally.
Well, right. So sometimes it's worth doing anyway. Of course, there's the opportunity cost. If I'm getting an encampment, maybe I could be getting something else.
Yeah.
That provides me a more permanent benefit rather than the one-shot nature of the encampment. I mean, if I have $2, sure, I'll get it and play it, and then it's gone, and that's great. But if I want to keep it around, I would prefer to have a deck that has a chance of keeping the encampment around before putting the encampment in my deck.
Yeah.
Because then, if I draw the encampment and I don't have a gold or plunder around, am I going to play my YOLO encampment, or am I going to not play it so that I don't have to give it up? Like, all this stuff feels really bad.
Well, so yeah, these are definitely situations that come across and questions that you ask yourself when you find yourself in those situations. Now, encampment is also interesting because, and the plunders as well, because this is a split pile of these really powerful cards, and that means that it's going to be split probably when they deplete, and they most likely will, and one player is going to have more of them than the other. And that really makes it interesting to play around because that player usually has a pretty strong advantage in terms of especially with the encampments, because if they have more draw than you.
I was actually going to say they have more, like, terminal space.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, it matters, right? I would say that being able to play an additional terminal action could sometimes be a bigger deal than being able to draw an extra card. It depends on a lot, but sure.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, and of course, you look at the rest of the board too and decide, is encampment the best /only village or best /only draw there? And, you know, if there's a lot of other supplementary draw or village, then this split gets less important, clearly. But in a lot of cases, the split is going to be the best of draw or village that's available in the kingdom, and so that split is going to really need to be in your mind because there's no chance of it going like 5-5. If you lose that split, you only got 2 of them or fewer, and if that's a vital piece of the deck, you're missing out.
Yeah, so you're talking about losing the split. And so I think there's a big difference between like a 3-2 split versus a 4-1 split.
Yeah, for sure.
So, like, you know, a normal kingdom pile in Dominion has 10 cards, and if you split them, it's 5 each, and if you don't, you're looking at 6-4, and, you know, 6-4 can be annoying, but, like, it's not nearly as polarizing of a difference as something like 4-1. I have 4 times as many of these as you, as opposed to, like, 50%, like, a half of the time. The point is that with a split pile, if you lose the split, you're in for some harsher consequences. And so with every split pile, I think it's relevant to go through an exercise of, well, what's going to happen if I really bork this split? And, you know, with Catapult and Gladiator, it doesn't really matter because the cards are terminal and you don't want a million of them. But, you know, with all of the other split pile cards, you know, Patrician and Encampment and maybe some other thing that I don't like saying around Jake because he gets triggered. Anyway, with those cards, you tend to care about how many you want, and losing that split by a lot can have unique ramifications depending on what the card is.
Oh!
In Encampment and Plunder's case, you're looking at 2 potential situations that result in pain, depending on which part of the split you've lost. If I don't have very many encampments, and my opponent does, then I've got 4 of these great cards in my deck. I can play a lot of actions, and I can draw a lot of actions and do a lot of cool stuff, and they're sitting there with 1 encampment, wishing they had more.
Right.
With the plunders, it's a little bit of a different, and I assume we would get to that when we talk about plunders.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we get into this point where the encampments can really sort of kind of run the early game just because of their sheer ability to enable you to play a bunch of cards and their cost. As Adam alluded to earlier, this really shines on board with multiple gains to take advantage of that cheap cost. But I do want to stress here that it is perfectly valid a lot of the time to buy an encampment with no intention of keeping it, either because you can't or because you're not likely to. I mean, yes, it's sad to have to put back encampments, but they also might help you get your deck up and running to the point where you eventually get more and keep more encampments, or maybe there's something else that you want to be doing. You buy Expedition sometimes, and that's kind of the same difference. So
I buy Expedition in less than 5% of my games.
Yeah, sometimes. And
but
so
that's because it only appears in like 5% of my games.
Okay. Yeah.
See what I did there? It's pretty good.
That was good, yeah. No, but you want to really think about, like, it's totally valid to do that, and so a lot of the time you draw the encampment and you're not guaranteed to keep it, and you're thinking about playing it, and it's usually, and we're going to get into some situations here, but it's usually right to go ahead and just play it, especially if it makes your turn better. Maybe it helps you buy that gold that you needed in the first place.
Yeah, so I think there's a thing that you want to do, and there's a thing that you don't want to do. Let's talk briefly about a thing you don't want to do with encampments, Jake.
Yeah, okay.
The thing that you don't want to do goes like this. I buy an encampment, and I buy another encampment. And now I have this turn with an encampment in it. And I don't want my opponent to get that encampment, but lucky for me, I've got $2. So I'm going to buy another encampment.
Yeah.
And then this happens, and it happens like 5 times, and you've been hitting 2 like a champ, okay?
Yeah, right.
And now you got all 5 encampments. You just crushed the encampment split.
And
way to go!
Not gonna stay the case, because
now your deck sucks.
Yeah.
Because you can't play these encampments. You just bought 5 curses, and you're never gonna be able to keep them in your deck, because how are you gonna get a gold? Don't do that.
Right,
Please.
there's definitely an aspect of tempo to keep in mind here.
Just play an encampment. Like, if I played 1 or 2 of those encampments early on, maybe I could buy a gold, and then buy more encampments. Or even better, build a good deck that maybe thins some cards, and then buys a gold, and gets like a plus buy card or something that can gain maybe 2 encampments in a turn.
Yeah, so
that feels a lot better.
There's this phase early on in the game where neither player really has a realistic shot of keeping the encampment in their deck, or at least by no means are they going to. And yet they do buy the encampments because the encampments are so good, and so the encampment, as a comparison you made, turns into like a mini Madman. It's kind of that's a good way to think about it. Is like you have the Madman, Mad Boy. You've got Madman in your deck.
Mad Boy is spelled MADBOI. Okay.
Okay, good.
Mad Boy.
Yeah, so you've got this thing in your deck that is basically a one-shot draw, but that's totally fine because it's making that turn a lot better. So go ahead and do it.
That first part of the process that I said was good, where you're building a good deck. A lot of the times when you play a card that helps your turn, it helps you build a good deck.
Nice.
So playing an encampment can be good there, even if you don't get to keep the encampment. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so the interesting part of this pile is that it kind of repurposes gold, because it's going to be a little while before the plunders get revealed. So having the gold in the deck is usually a function of payload. Usually you're doing that to hit a price point, and gold still does that. It's still great at that. But the purpose of golds on an encampment board, particularly getting an early gold, which you try to do, becomes deck control. The gold becomes something that helps you keep these encampments in your deck, and so getting one early becomes more of a priority than it normally is.
Eat your heart out, storyteller.
Yeah. So, yeah, and obviously, you get a lot of mileage in this case out of cards where you are able to save things for future hands. Now, you are going to be in this situation at a certain point where you do have that early gold that you've tried to spike to, and you've got one encampment or so, but you don't have quite the deck control yet to guarantee. So you get a lot of mileage out of things like gear and save, things like that.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking about Herbalist, because like if I buy a gold, I would like to play that gold, and I think Herbalist is the only card in the game. Well, maybe there's some Mandarin tricks, but then you're buying a Mandarin, so that's not great.
In this situation, you're buying an Herbalist.
Yeah, but Herbalist is actually pretty good because it gives you the plus buy to help you pick up more encampments.
Oh, that's true.
And it helps you keep your encampments in your deck. So, like, I mean, Herbalist isn't the strongest card ever, but in terms of helping you keep encampments in your deck, it does a really stinking good job at that.
Yeah, sure.
And you probably don't mind so much that it's terminal because you're keeping encampments in your deck.
Yeah, terminal space tends to not be much of an object when the encampments are out. Just because
especially early on in the game.
Yeah.
Like, maybe later on I'm going to be pickier about my terminal space, but later on I'm probably going to be as thin as I want to be, and I'm going to have a little bit more reliable deck control, and, I'll be aiming to increase my payload. And so, Herbalist, you did your thing. We're really happy for your service, and we're really glad that we had what we had and we have it. But hashtag the tribe has spoken, and maybe you wouldn't be useful anymore. Sorry, we gotta let her down easy.
Yep.
After the alchemist broke her heart.
Poor Herbalist.
Poor Hermietta.
The Herbalist.
She had a name, I forgot what it was. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, so you'll also be in this situation, of course, where that we've alluded to, where you have a gold and a plunder in your deck. You've got the theoretical tools to be able to play an encampment and keep it. but yet you have the encampment in your hand and you don't have the gold in your hand, so you play the encampment and it's a risk. So you're in this question, man, do I play the encampment and hope that I draw the gold?
Yeah, do you YOLO that encampment?
Or do I hang on to it and try to hopefully make the deck better so that I can play the encampment in a way that'll let me keep it?
Yeah.
There are a few considerations that get into that, and one of the big ones is, one, do you have the deck control to like build your deck in a way that eventually you'll be able to play an encampment without risking losing it? Because if that's never going to be the case, remember, you don't want to have the encampments be curses that you can't play.
Yeah, it's kind of like Madman. It's like if I have a Madman in hand and someone hits me with a discard attack, maybe you should consider still playing your Madman.
Yeah.
Not that that's ever happened to anyone here.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, me neither.
But, so you also consider this play, which is very often the right play, in my opinion, to...
The right play. The correct play.
Yes.
The A+ maximizing win rate play.
To actually hoard the encampment. To not play it when you have a risk of losing it just to keep it in your deck. A lot of the time that is something you need to do, and it comes down to how important those encampments are. But the other thing it comes down to is thinking about, before you play any card, if I play this, how much better does my turn actually get?
Yeah, like that calculation I think is the most relevant thing about this. Like, if I play this encampment, regardless of what I draw, is it going to make my turn better?
Yeah.
And if the answer is not, like, definitely yes, to the point where it's much better by an encampment, like, then don't play the stupid thing. But, like, if I'm going to play this encampment, it's going to draw me back to my workshop, and I can just play the workshop to gain another encampment.
Right.
Yeah, do that one. But that's
or
a
the
plus
buy and 2 coins or whatever.
Yeah, like that sweet, sweet woodcutter. That delicious, magnificent woodcutter.
Yeah. In other words, drawing an encampment and not playing it for fear of losing it is kind of like trading tempo. You're trading the tempo of this turn to essentially invest in this future deck that you might have that gets to play that has this extra encampment in it, and then gets to play all of these encampments with impunity, without fear of losing them. So you want to think, one, is that deck likely to ever manifest? Is that actually a realistic investment to get value out of? And two, how far along does playing the encampment get you to building that ideal deck later?
Yeah, so like if your opponent seems like they're pretty interested in also having encampments, which
they
frequently
probably
happens.
are.
Yeah,
because encampments OP.
It's a pretty good card. Yeah,
OP. Yeah.
Is over purple.
Yes.
Yeah, but let's say your opponent is interested in that encampment. Now you have this situation where you don't want to just let them have that encampment because maybe long term it's going to make their deck better. So you have this consideration of like, well, the deck I eventually want to build, it can play now one more terminal action in a turn. What is that terminal action? How much better are my future turns going to be? And that puts in perspective the sacrifice you're willing to make, not the card sacrifice, but the game related sacrifice you're willing to make, and maybe you can help justify that by saying, oh well, I'm gonna play an extra woodcutter on all my turns now. Okay, well maybe not worth it, but maybe I'm gonna play an extra bridge troll or something. Well, okay,
sure.
Maybe that's worth it.
Yeah, another really big consideration that goes into whether or not you play your encampment when you might lose it is reading the phase of the game. Obviously, when neither player has a gold in their deck, you have probably still bought some encampments at some point because they're a big boost to whatever it is you're doing. They speed you along. They draw you cards and let you play terminals. That's great. And you can always buy it back later if you need to. But once you get to the shuffle before either player has a gold or is about to get one, you really start thinking a little more carefully about playing them in general because they switch roles. The encampments switch from being this tempo booster that you buy almost sort of like an event, or kind of analogous to the newly revealed Experiment, to a highly contested deck component.
Oh, I was thinking rocket boots, but anyway.
Yeah, rocket boots, Experiment, same thing.
Yeah.
To this highly contested deck component, we come back to the fact that there is only 5 of them. It doesn't actually even feel like there's only 5 of them in the first few phases of the game, because it feels like the supply is limitless. Yeah. But once you, and more importantly, once your opponent has a gold in their deck, you really need to think twice, because if those encampments are permanently sticking to their deck, then you might lose it forever by playing it.
All right. Well, you ready to talk about some other cards maybe from this pile?
Yeah. So there is another card.
Yeah. It's called Plunder.
Yeah.
Let me just full disclosure this. Jake outlined this episode, and he put a lot of things under Plunder, and I read them, and I disagreed with pretty much all of it. So here we go, Jake. Let's go. This is going to be a really fun discussion to have.
Adam and I definitely had some disagreements on Plunder and Encampment, specifically Plunder. One of the big things is that I said that the main purpose of Plunders is keeping encampments in your deck.
Oh, I disagree.
I think that is the most important thing that they do, because for the most part, the encampment is a better card for your deck than the Plunder is.
I mean, so there are these things called VP tokens, okay? And they
you
give
put them
you
in your
points.
mouth. Yeah,
you put them in your mouth. They give you. You haven't done that in a while, have you?
No.
Why not? Are you trying to hold back, or
I'm
what?
growing up. I'm getting a little more refined.
Oh, you have a more distinctive palate.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. I've been eating a lot of the little cubes from Carcassonne.
Oh,
but anyway,
okay.
so...
But anyway, VP tokens are really, really great. And when you don't have to spend an action to get a VP token, and you can just keep playing the card that gives you a VP token as much as you want, that's really good, and that's way better than Encampment. I mean, Encampment helps you do it, but like...
Okay, Plunder is a very good card. It's very good payload. I am gonna say this... Plunder is overrated. I'm just saying it.
Plunder is underrated.
It's just... It's easy to overestimate what the Plunders are actually doing.
It's easy to underestimate what the Plunders are actually doing for you.
So, in the most respects, it competes with gold. Obviously, it costs less, but the similarities are outweighing the differences. If you can afford 6,
all you
can
care
afford
about
5.
in your life is keeping encampments in your deck.
And we
Plunder is
addressed
competing
earlier,
with gold.
that's the main purpose of golds and
But I
Plunders on those
disagreed with
boards.
that as being the main
I know,
purpose
but
of
you were
Plunder on the
wrong
board.
then, and you're wrong now.
You're wrong.
You're wrong. So I really like how Gazbag put it. Gazbag is another prominent member of our community, and he helped me put it in perspective when he said that the Plunder is like a harem that you have to play twice to get the points.
That's garbage.
Okay.
That's so not...
That's not accurate, obviously, but... The points where it is accurate and the points where it isn't accurate do a lot of telling as to what the Plunders are and how to value them, because obviously you can play it more times than the harem.
All right, we are finally moving back in the direction that is towards logic. So I'm glad to hear you saying this. So like, if we can concoct some situation where Plunder is worse than harem, then I will agree with you. Plunder's not great there, because newsflash, harem's not a great card. Just look at the art.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not standing by that statement. I did like it. I thought it was pretty punchy and it got me thinking. But the points where it is accurate and isn't accurate, the Plunder basically being like harem, that actually does a lot of mileage in helping you evaluate the card in terms of how many times am I going to get to play this before the game ends.
Yeah, so I think the more apt comparison, actually, because this is frequently a thing you compare harem to, is Duchy. Because if I'm not going to see that card 2 more times, give me my Duchy, man.
Yeah, so I really do compare it a lot to gold, to the point when I reveal the Plunders, I'm thinking, and I hit 6 or more, I'm thinking about adding some payload to my deck, and that's about the time when I would add a Plunder. Or I'm thinking about something to keep encampments in my deck, and that's about the time I would add a plunder. So when I'm deciding between these two, I have to decide if I'm going to get more mileage out of the VP token than the extra dollar every turn.
So, like, if you could only buy one plunder ever, if the split pile had never mind. I don't even want to get into this. Like, you don't just buy one plunder, okay? If you're playing just big money, then you might buy one plunder because it seems pretty decent. But, like, I mean, in that point, you probably should be buying a duchy or maybe a harem. I don't know. That's not in the kingdom. My point is, the plunder is important not because you can buy one of them and it's great. Plunder is important because you can buy up to 5 of them. And having 5 plunders that you play every turn is a huge, huge deal. And denying that to your opponent is a huge, huge deal. And all of a sudden, because that dynamic exists, that's way more important on my mind than, like, keeping encampments in my deck.
Okay, I'm going to agree with almost all of that.
This is like the one point we agreed on.
Yeah, so like what Adam said, totally 100% on point, except for the part where you stop caring about keeping encampments in your deck. You never stopped keeping encampments in your deck.
I didn't stop caring. I just said it was more important.
I don't mean to trivialize the plunder points. They are really good. I will say this. This aspect of having 5 plunders in your deck is theoretical. That's not really something that is going to happen, or that you would necessarily even want to happen. Here's the thing. You wouldn't just shove 5 plunders into your deck. The plunders are probably not going to be comprising the bulk of your score. It doesn't so much matter how many of them you're getting. It matters, are you getting them? Is your opponent getting them? What are you getting in relation to each other? Getting 2 or 3 plunder points a turn versus getting 5 plunder points a turn, it's not a huge difference. It still means that VP is scaling up in my favor as the game goes on, and I don't often build decks that can just accommodate 5 silvers and still be reliable.
So, let me see if I can go through every single point you said, because almost all of it was wrong. I would totally shove 5 plunders in my deck. Like, you give me any deck and you give me the option to shove 5 plunders in it, I'm saying yes, like 100% of the time. So I would say yes to silvers like 95% of the time in that case. Now, that's not realistic because you have to pay for plunder and, you know, you could be buying something else like, I don't know, duchy or harem or whatever.
And to be fair, the encampments are drawing you the plunders to help you accommodate those 5 silvers we were talking about.
I mean, they could.
But there's other stock cards.
You need to have some kind of payload to, you know, buy plunders, and hopefully you can make like 10 and 2 buys, and so you have to draw that too. So it's a little bit less trivial. The thing is, it's not about like having 2 or 3 plunders and then my opponent having 0. Okay, it's about how many points per turn you're making on your opponent. Yeah. So like if I have 4 plunders and my opponent has 1, now every single turn for the rest of the game, I'm making 3 points that don't make my deck worse. And so if the game's gonna go on like 3 or 4 turns longer than this, then that is a huge, huge advantage, because now I have 12, 9, 15 points that are just there, and I have them and my opponent doesn't. And this is something that scales. This is not going anywhere. I don't have to make my deck into something that can't play these plunders anymore. In fact, I'm going to be adding more deck control so I can play my plunders even more. I don't have to buy any more cards. If this is something that favors me, the threat of a situation like this is far more important than the execution of it.
Yeah, I'm with you. No, like
that's why a competent opponent will be contesting you.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, 100%. This situation where you have the 5 plunders in your deck isn't going to exist, because, again, you've got that split in mind. Now, losing the plunder split 2-3 also isn't the end of the world, though.
I think that doesn't matter, right? Yeah. Because 1 point...
You're making 1 point a turn, but, like, by the time...
the last plunder, you just bought a duchy, and it would have been the same, right?
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is that if the plunders are empty, that's 1 pile gone, and it's 1 pile gone in a game where people have a bunch of encampments in their deck. That game's probably going to end pretty soon.
Okay, here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
The 2 of us sitting here in my basement right now, we are not looking at a whole kingdom. We're talking about 1 card, okay?
Yeah.
Whenever our listeners, though, when they are in this situation, they're looking at a kingdom and a game state.
Exactly.
Our listeners are smart. I know this because they're listening to our podcast, and that makes them awesome.
Possibly even driving.
Hi, listeners. If you're driving, please make sure you're wearing your seatbelt. We care about you. But the thing is, like, they can look and see how close the game is to being over.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, if the game is close to over, obviously if there are 2 piles empty and the plunder is the last of it, don't spam the plunders if you're going to lose the game, right? Don't empty the third pile. Don't do that. Mm-hmm. That's one extreme. The other extreme is this is the first pile to empty, which is a very valid situation, in which case the plunders get extremely important. And, you know, in the middle ground, it becomes the middle ground. I think there's a fundamental disagreement on how often we think that happens.
Yeah.
But in reality, that doesn't frickin' matter, because you can figure that out for yourself and then just, like, buy plunders accordingly, knowing that if I let my opponent get all the plunders and the game's going to go on longer, I'm going to lose the freaking game. But if I let them get all the plunders and I buy a duchy and then the game's over, well, then that's pretty great.
Yeah, no, I don't think Adam and I actually disagree on how good of a card plunder is, really. I think we just agree on, like Adam said, I think we disagree on the situations that come up and which ones favor which most often. So the idea...
Namaste.
Yeah, I'm normally, if I have the option between buying a plunder and buying a gold, I'm normally going to buy the plunder. But like Adam, how much value am I getting out of that dollar versus the VP chip and the game scaling in my favor a little bit more? Now, the split of plunders, whether or not they're empty, by the way, I'm talking about just in relation to how many plunders
that's an important distinction.
Your opponent has versus you, and whether or not they're going to get more, etc. It comes down to, if the game keeps going on, am I favored to win? So one thing that you need to do is evaluate the plunder split and just, tailor your gameplay to that. If your opponent has 2 plunders or whatever, and you're thinking about something to gain a plunder or something to help you end the game on a lead before that plunder matters, you think about how likely it is that you can actually do that.
And have a plan to end the game. Right?
Yes.
Have to have that plan in mind.
Yeah. Basically, if you do skip out on the plunders, you are making a bet that you can end the game before the points matter too much. And if you lose that bet, you lose the game, obviously. Because the game will scale out of control.
If you lose that bet, you lose the game, you lose your life. No.
Yeah, no, you lose your girlfriend.
That
but,
too, yeah.
Yeah, so your ability to end the game before this points per turn gap really comes into play is the biggest indicator over whether you should take another plunder or take something else, like a point source, like a province or something,
or a harem.
Mill province or a harem. Yeah. I am still going to reiterate that I think the most important thing plunders do is keep encampments in your deck.
And I'm going to reiterate that I disagree with that. Let us know in the comments section. Tell us who you think. I mean, this doesn't frickin' matter.
No,
but, tell us about it anyway.
Yeah, totally.
Why the F not, right?
Now, there is another aspect of plunder encampment that I have seen people do, and that I'm sure I've been guilty of myself, and I call it plunder footsie.
Yeah.
Basically, this is this idea when the encampments are low, plunder, nobody's gotten a plunder yet, maybe somebody has one, maybe not, I don't know, but people play around this, either not reveal golds to encampments and put them back on purpose after they buy a plunder, or they don't buy that last plunder because they don't want to let their opponent get their first crack at the plunder. This is terrible. Don't do this.
Yeah,
don't play
really
plunder.
bad.
It's just silly. Don't play plunder footsie. The only time... It does not matter if your opponent gets the first plunder. The only time it would matter is if your opponent on his turn is going to generate enough money and buys to grab like all the plunders for some reason.
It still seems bad.
Yeah, and then like you just go ahead and reveal the encampment. Grab the encampment because if the plunders are so good, you're revealing them for yourself over the next couple of turns too.
I don't want to say never do this, because like I can concoct situations that are
Sure.
very specific. Like, oh, I can get 2 plunders on a turn, and my opponent can only get 1, and I want to get the initiative on the plunders, because then I can have 4 of them to 1, and I think that'll win. And like, yeah, sure, maybe, but like that's really narrow, and it sounds like you've already won the game.
Yeah, just go ahead and get the f***ing encampment. It's a good card for your deck. Putting encampments back is sad because you don't have them anymore. You know what else is sad? Not having them in your deck because you didn't buy them. Just get the encampment. Like,
Yeah, man.
yeah. So,
You feel better now, Jake?
yeah, I feel better.
Okay, me too.
So anyway, Encampment Plunder is can be a pretty centralizing pile a lot of the time. It's good support payload and it's good support deck control, but it's also like, it's such good support that it really kind of makes the game revolve around itself almost like half the time, I'd say.
I mean, I don't really know what any of you said, what you said means,
I don't
but
either.
like, sure, that seems fine.
Yeah. So as always, we're gonna have a kingdom where we're gonna say more stuff that neither of us understands,
Yeah.
and
pretty
that's
great.
gonna have Encampment and Plunder in it.
Yeah. Do you want me to read some cards?
Adam's gonna read the cards that are in this kingdom.
Yeah, they're gonna be in the kingdom.
Yeah, that we're gonna play.
Here we go. We have Royal Blacksmith, Poorhouse, Duchess, Encampment with Plunder, Doctor, Fortune Teller, Gladiator with Fortune, Scheme, Haggler, Expand, and there's also Plan and Fleet. Whoa, it's a Renaissance card!
Ah, we found one. Yeah.
Once more for our audio-only listeners. Royal Blacksmith, Poorhouse, Duchess, Encampment, Doctor, Fortune Teller, Gladiator, Shima, Haggler, Expand, and there's Plan and Fleet.
All right. So this is an interesting kingdom, right?
Yeah, look at this business.
Yeah.
I don't see any plus buy other than Fortune.
Yeah. There's no
there's-
plus buy, no extra gain. So
Well, there's Expand and Haggler, but Haggler doesn't help you get more than 1 encampment in a turn, while Expand does.
Haggler
But it
does
costs
set
7.
up this dream situation where you buy a gold that comes with an encampment.
That sounds pretty sexy.
Yeah, so obviously you're gonna want to build your deck to get to that point and take advantage of that, and that's not gonna happen right away. So
You could get a Plunder and Haggle and Encampment.
nice.
Actually, you can't do that.
Wait, yeah, I was like, what? So yeah, I think that the goal of this deck is going to be probably to contrasting what I said before. I think the Plunder split's going to be a big deal here.
Well, I think the encampment split's a pretty big deal because it is the only village.
It's the only village, but the only real terminal to capitalize on a village is the Expand.
I would say that Expand is pretty good. I think Royal Blacksmith is, you might have one of those in the deck.
Yeah, sure.
I think you want to get thin. I think Doctor's important, which causes me physical pain because Doctor's a bad card, but it's probably okay here.
Yeah, I mean, the Doctor helps you with thinning too, but the Plan is going to do a lot of work, I think.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what are you planning, though? I think you probably open Plan on something.
It depends on a lot. So what I really want to have my Plan token on is the encampments, right?
Eventually,
It's a
yeah.
cheap pile. I can buy a lot of cards from that. And so in the abstract, that seems like what I want to do. On the other hand, with a 5-2, obviously you're going to get a Doctor turn 1. With a 4-3, I think I'm getting a Doctor turn 1. With a 3-4, Plan gets a lot more attractive.
You could also plan Doctor, and that would be not terrible.
I mean,
Like, it's
I
not-
would probably do that on a 3-4. I would plan Doctors, and I would get the Doctor, overpay, trash the estate.
Yeah.
The nice thing about that is, let's say you open 3-4, you get X and Doctor, and you
Yeah.
overpay by 1. If your name is Adam Horton, there is a 100% chance that you reveal X to your Doctor on the overpay.
This is true.
So the plan actually gets around that pretty nicely.
Yeah, it does. It makes it a 0% chance that you accidentally trash your opening buy with, or that you accidentally look at your opening buy with Doctor.
Yeah.
Overpay.
I usually top deck that stupid piece of crap.
Yeah, so the other thing
Oh,
You
on a
could play-
2/5, I would probably cry into my pillow and get something dumb like Encampment and Haggler, or maybe Encampment with a Doctor, but I'd probably just get the Haggler.
I wouldn't
sad.
be that sad about opening with a Haggler, though.
I'd be sad. I don't think I really...
Because you can buy stuff
Feels
that will
bad,
come
yeah.
with encampments. Like...
You can, but like then you're not thinning your deck, which seems really important.
You can thin your deck later. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'd rather be thinning up front, but the opening with the Haggler is pretty appealing because having your buys come with encampments that are speeding you up along the way is fine.
It's a good card. I'm still pretty sad about it, but sure.
Yeah, I think it's the worst opener, but I don't think it's so much worse that you're crying into your pillow. But
Jake,
I'm not going to tell you where to cry.
That's right. I was just about to tell you
so-
not to tell me where to cry.
Yeah, so
This is 2018. I'll do what I want.
Yeah, getting thin is obviously really important. That's coming from a mix of the doctors and the doctor and the plan. You could also plan scheme. That's fine, I guess. Planning any non-terminal card really is going to be fine because you can get a bunch of it in thin.
I guess it's fine. I don't know about Gladiator. What do you think of Gladiator?
Yeah, I think that this is going to suffer from one of those... this is going to be one of those games where we both really want Fortune, but neither of us really wants to put the Gladiators in our deck, so it never becomes a good idea to put the Gladiator.
I think I want to put the Gladiator in the deck.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, why are you doing that?
It gives me $3 and it's going to help me hit expand.
It's not necessarily giving you
Or
$3, though. It's usually probably giving you $2. It's competing with playing your Doctor or your Haggler.
I mean, if I'm going to have encampments around that I play, I'm not too worried about the terminal space. If I have Gladiator and Doctor in hand, there's a good chance that I'll be happy to play Gladiator, reveal the Doctor, have a decent shot at hitting $3 with it.
So,
I think the Gladiator is probably a fine card for the deck.
Okay, well, if the opponent's getting the Gladiators, then I think you definitely at least get the Fortunes. And
It's a great card, yeah.
yeah, at that point, things get weird because the Fortune might come with gold.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Actually, that synergy.
At that point in the game, I would hope that we're past the point where gaining a gold is a huge deal. But yeah, so okay, if that's the case, if either one goes for Gladiators, the game definitely takes a different turn.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think that expand is going to be pretty important. You're either expanding golds into provinces or you're just milling provinces with expand. So once you get an early lead, I think that you could probably force the game in, especially if you lose the plunder split. I think that your end game becomes getting expands and then milling provinces with it.
I think even if you win the plunder split, like the expands are probably pretty good. I think the idea of like having a lot of encampments so that I can maybe put 1 or 2 Royal Blacksmiths in the deck to draw a lot of cards. Maybe that's great for my Fortune.
Sure.
Or, have the terminal space to play a couple of expands. That's going to make a difference. I think encampment split is probably the more relevant split between encampment and plunder here.
Sure.
Reading the game state and deciding if Fortunes are going to be entering the game anytime soon. Or, maybe if I want to be getting some plunders, if I have an expand and maybe I can get double plunder turns somewhat easily, maybe I will prioritize that. I don't think I can tell you by looking at this board right now without knowing more information if plunders are going to be important, but I can tell you that I think encampments will be.
Well, encampment plunder tends to be that kind of a pile where you can say less in terms of sweeping strategic statements, and it's a much more tactical reaction-based pile in terms of reading the game state and making the best play accordingly.
So I know how much you love saying stuff like that. I'm glad you got a chance to say that. You do say that about a lot of cards, and frankly, I think that's the case for a lot of cards, and that Jake is right about that when he says that, even if he sounds like a broken record. So if anyone out there is like, well, you always do this, and this is correct, well, poopy on you.
Yeah. Were people saying that?
I don't know.
But anyway, yeah. Yeah, I think the interesting thing for me is, like, how are you playing your expands? Are you playing the expands to make your deck better? Are you playing your expands to gain provinces and make your deck worse? Or are you playing your expands to be deck neutral but mill provinces?
And
I think that's going to come down to...
If you have an expand in your hand and nothing else that you can trash to gain a province, like, what are you doing with your life?
Well, I mean...
Just, like, gain a province, trash something else, man.
You could, but that makes your deck worse, right? So, like, if that's a gold, you could be spending the gold to, whatever. The idea...
I don't think milling provinces with expand is ever going to be good here.
I think it might be good if it helps you end the game faster. If it's...
You can just gain provinces. Like, usually having the points in your deck already and then milling the provinces to close out the game is a stronger move.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is when how you prioritize doing that. I think if the plunders run out and you lose that plunder split, you probably start to aggro mill provinces.
I think when the plunders are revealed, you decide on your game plan. And that game plan may involve losing the plunder split if you think that serves you better.
Sure.
Gains are limited here, so, getting the plunder pile stack is potentially harder to do, but if you can get there, then it may be harder for your opponent to close out the game, which is why I think expand is important, because it's good at closing out the game and less good at getting plunders. So it's a mark against plunder.
Yeah. So, I think we both agreed we're opening Fortune Teller Silver and playing the Poorhouse Engine.
What do you think of Fleet here? You think you would open Fleet?
Open? What?
Yeah.
No.
Fleet Poorhouse or Fleet Duchess.
No, so, like, Fleet is interesting. It's the new one, and so...
I have no idea if it's going to be good. Don't ask me.
Yeah, ever. Like, I mean, like, so... I don't understand...
Seems fine. I don't know.
I mean, this idea that you have this extra turn, it's probably going to be gaining a duchy, because provinces are probably piling here.
Playing your plunders, woo!
Well, yeah, I mean, you're joking a little bit, but no, like, that's the thing.
I wasn't joking.
Yeah, he's hilarious. But you get to play your plunders, you get to probably gain a duchy. I think that the fleet is pretty actually important, because I think that you are getting at least a duchy plus the plunders you can play. That's almost the value of a province. It doesn't go in your deck right away.
You could trash curses with plan on your fleet turn.
Yeah, if you've got curses.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be pretty good. Let us know what you think.
Yeah.
You can leave a comment on the YouTube video if that's how you're watching the podcast.
Yep.
Or if you are an audio-only listener, you can go to adamhorton.com. There's a blog there and plenty of links at the top. You can go to our Discord server, holler at us there.
Yeah.
Got some forums, holler at us there. There's a contact page, holler at us there.
Yep.
Links to the YouTube channel, holler at us there.
Show up to Adam's work, holler at him there.
Yeah, that's normal.
Yeah. Show up to my work, but, man, you don't want to... Anyway.
My work's pretty boring, too. You can show up to the Dominion tournament that I'm going to be hosting in about 2 months in January of 2019. Holler at me there, man!
Yeah, no, that'll be cool. And me too, but I'll be focused on playing Dominion.
Yeah. Sweet. So thanks for listening. We appreciate that. And we're going to probably do some more episodes of Making Luck soon.
Someday, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty sweet. I was at work today, and I got a call. It was from this number. It's on the webcam. I mean, I don't really care about sharing it. They left a voicemail. I actually didn't get the missed call because I keep my phone on airplane mode while I'm at work because I can't have it with me. Anyway, they left a voicemail, and I wanted to play that voicemail. So here we go.
中国驻纽约总领事馆提醒您，您有一封文件尚未领取，请期待相关证件过来领取。如需人工查询，请按9。 将由专人为您服务。
Is anyone else hungry after this? Could really go for some General Tso's or maybe some sushi.
So I think
Is that racist? I don't know.
I think the question on all of our minds after hearing that is,
Who did you off? Like,
I was gonna say, what in the actual
yeah, I don't know, man.
can anyone out there like understand that? Like, I thought it was Japanese, and Jake was like, no, it's definitely not Japanese.
I listened to too much anime. I would have recognized some of it.
So like, what, we don't. I can't even tell you what language it is. I just like, I got that voicemail today, and I don't understand.
Yeah.
Can someone please help? Like, if you can tell me like anything about that, I need to know.
Yeah, especially if there's half-price sushi involved. But